I want to walk you through every step of this kit, how it works, how you should be optimizing it, and also just what you can expect from buying a digital template with me. Because when I'm buying something online, I want to know that this is the real deal. So I'm going to walk you through every single step of this template just so you know what you are spending your hard earned money on, you will actually be able to use for your podcast. So I made this podcast media kit and rate card for anybody that is a podcaster and that is ready to finally start taking monetization a little bit more seriously. As someone that's been in podcasting since 2020, I have realized over and over that if you don't do it yourself, it's not going to get done. And the chances of a sponsor pursuing you, unless it's very specific, are pretty small, especially for newer creators and creators that don't have thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. So this podcast media kit is the exact kit that I use and I send out and that I've made over $200,000 with. So I am so excited to share it with you and hopefully to help you out and help you start making money on your podcast. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing is going to be when you purchase the kit, it will take you to this page. Also, it will email you all of these assets. So if you somehow get clicked off of this page or anything like that, it will email you everything. So make sure that you're putting an email that you actually use. But if you're just on the homepage and you've clicked order complete, you will go ahead and click right here, access digital content. And from there, it will take you to this page. So it will give you a little breakdown of what you just bought, the podcast media kit and rate card, and then also how you are going to download this kit and the PDF that will take you to the actual Canva template. So we'll go ahead and click this and then download it into whatever downloads or my desktop or wherever you have when you download something, the asset going to. And this is the PDF that you're going to download. It's just a quick little 3-page PDF that I've sent for you guys where you can quickly download your template and also just gives you a little bit more information about me, how you can stay in touch, how we can work together. So, but just for now, we'll go ahead and click to download so that we can get to the Canva template. So all you have to do is either click this button or click on the image. And then it will take you to this nice little landing page where you can choose to add the template to your library. If you've ever bought a template for Canva, this is exactly how it goes. Just gives you the option to go ahead and use the template for your own new design. So you'll click this little purple button right here and it will be added to your Canva library. Perfect. So now it is in your library and it is ready for you to start customizing it for your own podcast. Yay. All right. So there are 3 things that I need you to have before you start working on this template. That is the podcast cover image for your podcast. So that square image that you use for your podcast, a headshot of you or your host, and also a screenshot of your podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever. It looks like this, just a screenshot from your phone. Those are the only things that you really need for this template to make it work. So once you have all of that, you're going to go ahead and this is just your first cover page. This is just the page when somebody opens it up that they'll see nice, clean, tells them exactly what they're looking at here. So you'll go ahead and change your URL right here. You'll also pull in your own cover photo. And it goes ahead and it optimizes it for you there, puts that nice little shadow behind it. Ooh, looks great. Okay, great. And then all of these different little elements are completely customizable. So whatever you want to change them to, you can just go through and make sure what looks good with your brand. And yeah, it's all totally customizable. Even these little pieces back here, you can change to any color that you want to so that it looks really good with your brand and it can be really cohesive. That was one of my main objectives with this template was that it looked really good, but it could look really good for anyone. So we keep going and this is the about page. So this is really when your sponsor is opening it up where they are going to get to know your podcast. So they've just opened up the cover photo and then they're over here and they're like, okay, let me read a little bit more about this podcast. So, like I said, make sure you have a screenshot of your podcast somewhere on your phone. So all you'll have to do is take a screenshot, like I said, upload it, and then from there, here is how you make this look right. Because I've had a few questions about how do I really make this graphic look good? All you have to do is scale it to the same size as the phone. I like to do this on top of the phone just so I can see exactly what it is. Then I go over here to border style and I'll round out these corners a little bit right here, the corner rounding, maybe just to 10%. So if you see right there, it's the corner is now rounded off. Then I'll go to position. And then I'll start sending it backwards until it is behind the phone. See how it just went behind the phone? So I go forward and backward. Now it's behind the phone. Looks amazing. Also, like I said, go ahead and have that headshot so that you can really quickly bring it in. Ooh, looks so good. Okay, great. All right, so now this is where we can really start going in, making everything look really cohesive. I would just change these to my brand colors, look amazing. Okay, let's talk about what your content is here. I want you to talk about your podcast. I want you to brag about your podcast. This is where I just put a couple lines about your podcast and what it is. This is where I would brag on my podcast. So I'd say, okay, it's ranking on this chart. It's 1% in the top 1%. It's X, Y, and Z. Brag on yourself. Take this entire opportunity to just brag on yourself and tell sponsors why they need to be advertising with you. Okay, this little section right here is going to be where you talk about your downloads and your listeners. You need to pull every single number that you can that really demonstrates, okay, these are the amount of listeners that I'm getting. This is the amount of listen time that I'm getting. I would be going on your podcast host. I would be going on Apple Podcasts. I'd be going on Spotify for podcasters. I would be looking at every single number so that you can pull these out because let me tell you guys, advertising agencies don't know that much about podcasts. So you have to be the one that is providing that information so they know that your podcast advertising slot is worth something. Okay, and then before we move off this page is just saying a little bit about the host or hosts, letting them introduce themselves and just saying a little bit about them. Okay, great. Now we're on to the target audience. And when we're sending this out to marketers, this is the first thing that they want to see because they want to see, okay, are my audience aligned with their audience? Do we have the same community? Do we have the same objectives? So take a second and think about your community for this podcast. Think about why you made this podcast. Think about who you made the podcast for. Make sure that it is scannable and make sure that when some advertising person comes on and looks at this, they can say, okay, this is the person that I'm looking for. This is the podcast that I'm looking for. All right, next is our rate card. So on our rate card, we want to talk about what the deliverables of this agreement will have. So do you have dynamic ads? Do you have static ads? Are you going to be writing the copy? How many episodes? Are you going to be linking the website? What are you going to be providing to them? Are you going to be giving a custom promo code? What are you going to be doing? I put this here just so that you can be reminded and you can be kind of editing it along the way to see, okay, this is what makes sense for my sponsors. All right, so for your monthly partnership pricing, what are you going to price your ads? You need to make sure that those are laid out and that people can quickly scan and say, okay, I have a budget of $400. I could do this pre-roll or X, Y, and Z. If you have questions about what your podcast advertising should be, I have several episodes about this on my podcast, Podcast for Profit. Just go ahead and look at the ones that are about ad pricing, listen to those, and it will give you a much better idea of what you should be charging for your podcast ads. Then next, I always just like to, again, I got to give myself a pat on the back and also say any big companies that you've worked with. Say big companies that you've worked with, say any previous partners that you've had, any place that you've been featured. Feel free to put all of that right there and give yourself as much credibility as possible. Next, like I said, so many agencies still do not understand the value of podcasts, but what they do understand is the value of social media. So take the time to put together your 3 biggest social media channels so that when someone looks at this, they say, okay, I understand that they have 20,000 followers on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever it may be, so that they can actually quantify that in their head and they're like, okay, but I understand that. You get what I'm saying? So make sure that even if they don't really get podcasts that much, they are connecting with you and your brand on some level. Also, before you export, go ahead and click on each one of these icons and feel free to change the icons, but make sure that you do this before you export it as a PDF. Make sure that you click on the icon, click more, then click link and insert what the link would be. So if this were, for example, your Apple Podcast, get the link to your Apple Podcast so that when you export this as a PDF, somebody can quickly just go through and click on all of these links and they're actually live links. Whew. Okay, great. So after all that, when you're ready to export, I think the best way to export a document like this, especially if you're sending it on email, if you actually want it to be able to fit on the email, is to download it as a PDF standard. So see where it says best documents and emailing? That is what you will download it as, and it will all be part of one big file, and you'll be able to send that out. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I am so excited for you to use this template. It is truly my baby. I have been working on this template for 4 years. So I hope that you guys know I love you for sharing it. And if you have any questions, please let me know. My email is support@morganfranklin.media.